Now we're going to cover Chapter 13, Part 2. In Part 1, we looked a little bit at how our social world can actually interfere with what we think. In this video, we're going to look more about our social influence and see how it actually will affect our actions and our thinking as well. So some of the topics in social influence are going to be cultural influences, conformity, obedience, group situations, and group behavior, so like social facilitation, social loafing, polarization, de-individualization, groupthink, and the power of individuals. So we'll start out with cultural influences. So culture, which is the behaviors and beliefs of a group, is shared and passed on to others, including the next generation of that group. So we pass down our practices and our belief systems from one member to the next and from one generation to the next. This helps to pass that family lineage, but it also passes on some traits and behaviors that may or may not be the best choice. So the sharing of these traditions, values, and ideas is a form of social influence that helps maintain the culture. It also helps to maintain the ideation of that culture. So norms are the rules, which are often unspoken but commonly understood, that guide behavior in a culture. So those norms are part of what the culture passes down, but it's also part of how we regulate members of the culture and how we influence them, and that social influence actually works to maintain the goals of that culture. Cultures change over time, and norms for marriage and divorce have also changed over time, especially in Western cultures. We see that these norms change from generation to generation. We moderate them a little at a time to meet different needs that are occurring in the society that we are looking at. Conformity is a form of social influence in which we go along with the group, or we conform to the group. When we look at this particular cartoon, it's asking what kind of social influence is looking at going on here. So when we look at be like all your friends and express your individuality, it's kind of an oxymoronic component. So if you're like everyone else, how can you be an individual? But our goal is to actually be similar or to belong to a group. So remember Maslow's belongingness. We want to belong to others. So when we look at conformity, mimicry, and other components of conformity, conformity simply refers to adjusting our behavior or thinking to fit in with a group standard. The power of conformity has many components and forms, and it also includes automatic mimicry. So this is affecting our behavior. We automatically behave similar to those around us. Our social norms, which are affecting our thinking. So our group believes these things to be true, and so we need to believe them to be true as well. And we need to think that this behavior is appropriate. Whether that behavior is good or bad, it depends on the group that you are norming towards. And then we have normative and informational social influence. So we'll talk about each of these as we go through the next few slides. Mimicry is not only it is not only true that birds of a feather flock together, it is also true that if we flock together, we tend to choose and wear the same things. And so we want to belong to this group, so we want to look like this group, we want to act like this group, and we want to truly be connected to the group. When we look at automatic mimicry, we have some of our mimicry of other people is not by choice, but actually it's a very automatic. It's called the chameleon effect. So we have unintentionally mirroring the body position and mood of others around us, leading us to like a contagious yawning, even a contagious arm folding. So we actually mimic the behaviors of others, and it's a very automatic unconscious component as we're sitting in a group with others. We also have empathetic mimicry. So this empathy kind of shifts in our mood to fit in with the mood of the people around us. And so we can actually bring our mood down if the group around us is in a much lower depressed mood. We can also bring our mood up when we are with groups of individuals who are happy and elated to be alive. So copying the actions of others, including forms of violence, hopefully forms a kindness, a connection with others, a likeness with those individuals around us. When we look at responding to social norms, when we are with other people and perceive a social norm, whether it's a correct norm or not, we tend to behave or think like the group. So our behavior may follow the norm rather than following our own judgment. So when we look at Asch's conformity studies, he had a groups of individuals who were designed to give the incorrect answer. And when our subject came in, they didn't want to go against the group, and even though they knew the answer was incorrect, they still went along with the group and gave the incorrect answer. They did not want to stand out. And that conformity is very strong and powerful. We do not want to be wrong alone, so we start questioning ourselves and believe that the group must know more than what we do. So this next slide is actually an example of the slides from Asch's study. So you can see that the standard line is very much the same length as line number 2. In the study, the people would give the incorrect answer, and it would be a very strong incorrect answer, so they would say 1, so that was distinctively not the correct answer at all. So what makes you more likely to conform? You are more likely to conform when you are not firmly committed to one set of beliefs or style of behavior. So if you're not quite sure where you stand, you are more likely to go along with the group. You're more likely to conform when the group is medium-sized and unanimous. So like in Asch's study, we had about 5 or 6 other individuals, and they all agreed on the same incorrect answer, so we would go along with that group. When the group gets much larger, we tend to be able to break off into groups, and if the group is very small, we're not as intimidated by that group. You'll conform when you admire or are attracted to the group. So when you really want to belong to that group, you'll do whatever that group says is the correct thing to do. And you'll conform when the group tries to make you feel incompetent, insecure, and closely watched. In Asch's study, when there were people who gave the correct answer on the first time, all of the group members turned and looked at them, and so they immediately felt very uncomfortable, and so they would give the wrong answer the very next time. And you'll conform when your culture encourages respect of norms. And so when you have a collectivist culture, the culture is designed around conforming around those social norms. We have 2 types of social influence. We have normative social influence and we have informational social influence. Normative social influence is going along with others in pursuit of a social approval or of belonging to that group. So we want to avoid disapproval or rejection from the group. Remember, we want to belong, we want to be part of a group. So the Asch conformity studies, the clothing choices, are both examples of normative social influence. Informational social influence is going along with others because their ideas and behavior make sense. So the evidence in our social environments changes our minds. So an example would be deciding which side of the road to drive on. So if we start driving on the wrong side of the road, we are going to cause accidents. Okay, so when we look at our different social expectations, we're going to move further in the next video talking about a few more areas that influence whether we go along with the crowd or whether we stand out alone.